Hello, everyone. People may ask me, what do you do in your spare time? And I have to tell them, nothing different from what you do. The only difference being that everything that I live and experience, I write it down on paper, or then later I can type it in my computer and so forth. Um, I'm just a regular person like everyone else. But as a human being, we experience things in our everyday life. We feel things in our everyday life. We perceive things uh, and things outside of us. And what makes up our identification or self identification is how we perceive and how are we influenced by the events surrounding us. But that happens with everybody, like sometimes, you're in a room and you can say, wow, it's really hot in this room. And some other person say, no, it's not too hot. It's actually cold, the way we perceive things around us change from person to person. But um, what makes a philosopher or a scientist different from other people is that they observe the same types of stuff. Maybe they might see it differently because, like for example, when you're walking in a hallway inside a building and you see a red light on the floor coming from a window, you say, oh, whatever, this is just the light coming from the outside, and so nothing important. But a scientist or a philosopher will want to argue, where is this red light coming from? You know, a philosopher and a scientist is always searching for the reason of why of things. So the difference between a philosopher and a scientist from a person that is neither is that the scientist and the philosopher are observing things around and writing them down. Because science begins with observation. Socrates, a great Greek philosopher, said, a life without observation is not worth living. In fact, observation is what leads to science. It's when you observe things and you write them down. And then another thing that the scientist does is that after the observation is taken and the details are written down, a scientist will read that later and will do more research in trying to understand the why of the observation. So that's a fact. That's what distinguishes. But a scientist or a physicist or a philosopher, we're just like everyone else. The only difference is that we're more careful with our observations and we're always seeking to learn more. So I myself have written several books which are on Amazon, and here are three that I really appreciate. Here are three of my books. Here we have Mathematics Shin. It's a book where I have my notes on physics, linear algebra, calculus, differential equations. I also talk a little bit about Greek philosophy somewhere in the beginning of the book. I talk about theories. I talk about the mathematics, the equations of mathematics. I also created some tables here which allows calculation without a calculator. I have my notes on quantum mechanics, everything in this book, which I have to say that some parts of the book don't have many words, as you can see here, but it does have more script based, so it doesn't have a lot of words, but a person who understands mathematics and who is able to follow down along the equations will hopefully not have many problems understanding the Mathematics Shin. I have two corpus ven. I have corpus ven 1 and I have corpus ven 2. The corpus ven 2 is my favorite. The cover tells it all. You have a pyramid with 4 towers and an obelisk in a city that looks green. Looks like a picture taken at night. Corpus ven, you have many of my philosophical arguments about nature and physics and science and mathematics. And I do some exploration of differential equations. And I have some pictures of the stars, as you can see, from my small telescope. Actually, the pictures look very nice on this book. I explain the concept behind the grid, which is a concept that I've already explained a few times here on my YouTube channel. And there's some characters that I also use to explain my philosophy. Everything that I live and everything that I experience, I try to put on paper, write it down, because I'm a big fan of Greek philosophy, which says a life without observation not worth living. So I'm always living, and I'm always experiencing, and I'm always writing. Here's Corpus ven by itself 1. This one, I have already recorded a video about this book. It has lots of my notes on astronomy and philosophy, some star pictures as well that are unique for this book, and many other things, explanation for the future. And on Corpus ven 1, I do sort of mention religion, but I try to be very careful with that, so that I will always have people that appreciate my ideas. Because the problem with talking about religion is that not everybody will agree on everything. So, but it's possible to philosophically argue everything in the natural world without mentioning religion, with just mentioning human reasoning in an attempt to understand and comprehend everything from observation. I'm just like everybody else. We have physicists or scientists or philosophers are just like any regular person. The only difference being that we write it down what we observe, and we try to explain what we observe.